Welcome to the Egg Whisperer Show, a program exclusively designed to promote reproductive health awareness and discuss fertility preservation options. Here is your host, the Harvard-educated fertility specialist, Dr. Amy.
She's known as the Egg Whisperer.
Fertility expert Dr. Amy Abazadeh.
And you have yet another success story
Just launched by an East Bay fertility doctor.
Hi everyone, thank you for joining me. Another episode of the Egg Whisperer Show. Tonight's episode is Fertility Myths Debunked. I'm basically a fertility myth buster. And as you can probably imagine, one of the negative parts of being a fertility doctor, one of the challenges actually, is dealing with all the fertility myths that I see out there every day, all day long. They're everywhere, whether it's a birthday party I go to or let's say I'm over at a home shopping party of one of my friends. So basically people come around and they say things to me, oh, you're a fertility doctor. Well, my neighbor, I just told her to go to Hawaii and that would help her have a baby. And that's just one of those fertility myths. And we'll definitely get to that in a second. So fertility myths are not just at your friend's house when you call your mom to get advice about stuff. They're even on CNN.com. So they're in fertility message boards, and I'll just show you one that I saw the other day. Headlines everywhere. Everyone was emailing me this story. Ibuprofen linked to male infertility, study says. Guess what? The study didn't say that. The study didn't even look at fertility. They just looked at kids and their LH levels after they were exposed to Motrin. That has nothing to do with fertility. That has nothing to do with sperm counts. They didn't even look at sperm counts. So how can this study then be translated into ibuprofen affects male fertility? That to me is a fertility myth, and I'm glad to be here to debunk it. So along those lines, let's just start from the beginning. One of the most common things I hear is patients come in and they say, I know why I'm having a hard time getting pregnant. It's because I've been on birth control pills for the last 6 years. And I look at them and I say, that's a fertility myth. But so many women carry that with them. They feel like they're somehow responsible because they took birth control pills and now they're trying to get pregnant. Here's the thing. Birth control pills, they mask infertility. And the way they mask it is when you're having regular periods on the birth control pill, that has nothing to do with what's really going on with your hormones. So my recommendation is when you're taking birth control pills, especially if you're taking them for a long time, some women start at age 16 and then don't start to have their family, especially in the Bay Area, by the time they're over 32. So during all that time, when you're the most fertile, you might not realize that you're losing precious eggs. So get your fertility levels checked, get a fertility consult, talk to someone about what's going on so that you're not one of those people that stops their birth control pills when they're ready to have a baby and find out that your periods are now irregular because you're running out of eggs too soon. And that's not something that I want anyone to face. So be sure to get a fertility check-in if you're someone who's on pills for a long time. And certainly birth control pills do not cause infertility. The next one I see everywhere, and if you don't know, I started Egg Freezing Party as a way to just educate people about fertility. That's all. But one thing that I see is people talking about egg freezing as insurance. So when your house burns down and you have fire insurance, guess what? The insurance company will pay for you and guarantee you a new house. When it comes to egg freezing, however, you're dealing with human biology and a chance for pregnancy, and that's it. It isn't insurance because we're talking about human beings and human biology. So your chance of pregnancy has everything to do with the age that you're freezing your eggs. And at that age, there's a pregnancy potential that goes along with it. And we know that it doesn't just take eggs to have a baby. It takes eggs, sperm, and a healthy uterus. So make sure when you're getting your eggs frozen, maybe consider having someone take a look, a second peek. Look at your egg freeze sheet. Make sure that you're freezing enough eggs for yourself for your future family size goals so that you don't look back and say, gosh, I wonder why no one told me this. And also make sure to check out the sperm and dive deep into the sperm DNA before you thaw them because you only get one chance with your precious eggs. So another fertility myth I hear all the time where patients come to me, I'll give you an example. A 44-year-old woman who comes to me and says, I just don't understand why I'm not getting pregnant. My mom had no problems. And then I said, well, how old was your mom when she had you? And she says, well, my mom was 19 years old. Certainly, that makes sense. It's a lot easier to get pregnant when your eggs are younger. So if you're older, your mom's fertility, while it's wonderful that your mom was able to have kids at any age, but for us women, it's really hard to get pregnant over the age of 40, especially over the age of 43. The chance of a 44-year-old getting pregnant is less than 5%. So don't rely on your mom's history to guide you about your fertility. We get these genetic variants from both our mom and our dad. So we can ask our mom, hey mom, when did you go into menopause? And that might help you learn more about your body. But certainly you can't ask your dad, hey dad, when did you go into menopause? Science has not helped us that far help a guy have periods. Haha, one day we'll have a male uterine transplant. That would be impressive. So the next thing is this. People say to me, I don't understand. I got pregnant with baby number 1 so easily. Why is it so hard for baby number 2? That's a fertility myth, that if you get pregnant easily with baby number 1, baby number 2 is right around the corner. So I have patients that say, we spent 3-4 years, we want to enjoy our first baby. And then we were finally ready to have the second baby. And then by the time they come see me, things have changed. The sperm quality is different. The egg quality is different. So if you're watching this show, listen to me. Regardless of whether you had a hard time getting pregnant with baby number 1 or not, as soon as you bring baby number 1 home, get your levels checked. Get the sperm maybe even frozen. If you got pregnant with an insemination, you want to capture that sperm when it's young and it's good, because things can change over time, certainly. People sometimes get diagnosed with new diseases. For example, Crohn's disease. You have to start methotrexate. That would have been a surprise, or not something that you would have anticipated, but if you had frozen sperm and you need to take certain gonatotoxic drugs, perhaps having those eggs or sperm cells frozen for your future, that might have helped you. So be sure to, as soon as you bring that baby home at your postpartum check, also talk about your future family size goals if that's something that you're interested in. The next myth I hear all the time, and it breaks my heart, is when people are told, you've had a miscarriage, that's good news, it means you're going to have a healthy baby very soon. So the problem with that statement is a lot of patients spend a lot of time without getting answers, without getting medical care when people are told that. And really good intention, well-intentioned doctors sometimes tell their patients that. And what hurts my feelings, not hurts my feelings, what makes me feel bad, and these kinds of things are the things that make me feel bad, are if, for example, someone, let's say, gets pregnant at 40 and they've had a miscarriage, and then someone tells them you need to wait and try at home for another year. Well, of course, I want everyone to get pregnant without my help. I don't want people to use medical technology to have a baby. It's so much more romantic and way cheaper to get pregnant at home. But if you really want a baby, maybe you need a little nudge, a little something to help you ovulate more than one egg, or maybe a little boost to the sperm. So if you're one of those people who had a baby and had a miscarriage, especially if you're over the age of 35, I would say don't wait. Get a fertility check, talk to someone about what your family size goals are, and see what you can do to make things even better. Just do a check-in, even if it doesn't mean that you want to take fertility drugs. Just do a check-in so you can learn about your DNA, your body, and what that all says about you. Another fertility myth. I hear this a lot. I have couples that come to me and the male partner says, well, it's not my problem, I already have kids. And then I show them my car out in the parking lot and it's plastered with bumper stickers, and one of them says, previous paternity does not equal current fertility. So like I mentioned a second ago, you can get pregnant with baby number 1 and things can change over the next few years. So even if getting pregnant was something that happened, let's say when you were 18 or 25, or you already have 2 kids, believe me, things can change with sperm. They can change because of lifestyle, lower testosterone, changes in your stress, changes in your sleep pattern. So be sure to get your sperm checked. And sperm checking isn't just about the count. It isn't, oh, I have a lot of swimmers. There are other tests that you can do as well. So if you're having a hard time, consider doing a DNA fragmentation test or an epigenetic test looking at sperm quality. So when it comes to how everything is connected in the body, the uterus, the fallopian tubes, the ovaries, there are a lot of myths that people believe, and it makes sense to me, but they actually aren't true. And one of them is this. So I have patients, and for those of you who don't know, about 15% of women have a hard time getting pregnant because their fallopian tubes are blocked. So the fallopian tubes are basically the embryo transport system. That's where the egg and sperm meet. The embryo travels down the fallopian tube before it sticks and grows inside the uterus. So if that embryo transport system is affected, if it's blocked, it's very hard to get pregnant without IVF. So Is there a way that you can tell with your body, with your cycle patterns, that your fallopian tubes are blocked? And the answer is no. But what's confusing to people is people think that if they're having periods, somehow that's connected to how the fallopian tube works and the egg traveling down the fallopian tube, because periods are a sign of the egg coming out. That's a myth. Eggs are microscopic. You would never see them. So if your fallopian tubes are blocked, that tube will just sit in your pelvis and disappear. And it's not something that you'd ever see or ever know. So if there's a chance that you might have a tubal blockage, there are imaging studies that you can do. So ask your doctor about doing them. So now let's get to some of the IVF myths. One of the most popular ones that I think people come into my office saying is that IVF makes you run out of eggs. So for example, let's say I get 16 eggs from somebody during an egg retrieval cycle. Somehow, not my patients, because I've talked to them about this ahead of time, but some of them ask me, does that mean that I'm actually going to go into menopause 16 months earlier because you just took out 16 of my eggs? And the answer is no, that's not how IVF works. I'm basically an IVF egg rescuer, not necessarily an IVF rescuer, but an egg rescuer, because IVF does not make you go into menopause sooner. It just doesn't do that. Every woman has a potential number of eggs that she can ovulate each month. Our brain sends a signal called FSH to our ovary. That FSH signal is in an amount just enough for us to ovulate 1 egg a month. But you have the potential to ovulate maybe 16. So by taking an extra dose of FSH hormone, your doctor can help you ovulate all 16 so that they can be removed, and hopefully viable embryos can be created for your future family. So IVF does not make you go into menopause sooner. That is a fertility myth. Another myth is IVF causes cancer. The hard part about this one is that fertility issues, that's a really common problem. Cancer, unfortunately, still a really common problem, especially breast cancer. So sometimes when people, celebrities especially, share their IVF stories and their breast cancer stories, sometimes people put it together. For example, Juliana Rancic's story. But what we know about her story is that she actually is a breast cancer gene carrier. So whenever I have a patient that's concerned about this, whenever I have someone who shares a personal or family history of breast cancer, it's always really important for me to do extra DNA testing and do a genetic carrier screen for them. And if you're ever concerned about anything, talk to your doctor. Whether you think it's a myth or not, bring it up so that you can feel better about what you're doing so you're more informed. So another myth, believe it or not, I have patients that, let's say, have blocked fallopian tubes and they say, I just don't want to take shots. You actually don't have to take shots to do IVF. There are ways of doing IVF, for example, natural cycle IVF, where you just retrieve the egg that you're naturally going to ovulate, or you can take fertility pills and then maybe ovulate 1 or 2 eggs and collect those. So if you're someone who's sensitive to shots, if you're worried about maybe what the shots are going to do for your body, if let's say you have some issues with depression or anxiety, don't worry. There's still ways that you could potentially have a baby if you happen to need the IVF technology for you, okay? So this one's a funny one, and I hear this a lot, and I bet there are a lot of people out there that think this, so I don't want you to think this anymore. IVF babies are healthier. So patients come to me and I ask them questions like this. So when was the last time that you guys were intimate? And they look at me and they say, well, we didn't want to have sex because we wanted to have an IVF baby because we heard that IVF babies are healthier. That's not true. It isn't. It isn't dangerous to get pregnant at home. It really isn't. But are there things that can increase your chances of getting pregnant by doing IVF? And the answer is yes. You could potentially genetically test an embryo, and that might give you a baby that has no chromosomal issues, especially if you're someone who's had lots of issues with miscarriages in the past. But this thought that IVF makes smarter, genetically engineered, designer babies just is a myth still, okay? And again, another myth, it's dangerous to get pregnant at home. Total myth. And another one is this. So this is just really for patients who come see me for the first time, and then once I talk to them through this, they understand this more. So I think a lot of this has to do with a lot of the fertility myths that we read about in the media and online about how people do IVF and then they get pregnant, but there's this thought that you wait and you do everything else until you do IVF because IVF works the first time. And I wish that was the case, but unfortunately, IVF doesn't work a lot of the time, the first time, especially if you're over 35 doing IVF. If you look at IVF pregnancy rates, they're actually less than 50% if you're, let's say, over 37. But one thing you can do if you want is genetically test your embryo, and if it's a high quality normal embryo, you can look at the mito score, and then you can see what the implantation rate would be for that embryo, so that maybe you would actually have a higher pregnancy rate with that embryo. But the fact that IVF works the first time is actually a myth, not a fact. Okay, so this one I hear all the time. I would probably say maybe 50% of patients who have a tipped uterus come to me and say, I have fertility issues because I have a tipped uterus. This is the thing. Everyone's uterus is either tipped forward or back, or kind of in the middle. I mean, we're all kind of made that way. But that sort of positioning of our uterus doesn't impact our fertility. However, there are some reasons why a uterus might be tipped, and that could be related to a condition called endometriosis. And endometriosis is a fertility-threatening condition. So if someone's saying your uterus is tipped and you might have symptoms of endometriosis, you may want to get that checked out. But otherwise, having a naturally tipped uterus is basically how you were made. So I imagine a lot of people are told this, and they might believe this because a lot of people take trips. And I hear them say when they see me that, we took this trip because everyone's telling us just go to Hawaii because you'll get pregnant. And the answer is, it's nice to de-stress, it's nice to get more vitamin D, but the thought that taking a vacation would increase your fertility, I would say it has other benefits, but getting pregnant may not be one of them. If that were the case, I would be starting a clinic in Hawaii so that everyone could come there and get pregnant 100% of the time. Hawaii Dr. Amy Clinic, coming soon. I wish. That would be really amazing. And then this is another myth, and I hear this quite often where people say, oh, so-and-so adopted and then they got pregnant right away. And the answer is this: when people love each other and they still have sex, you never know when you're going to ovulate the golden egg and have the perfect egg-sperm combination. But the concept that adopting actually increases fertility because all of a sudden you're not thinking about it, I would say is a myth. I certainly have had patients who have adopted, and I love it when people choose that option. I guide them in my office, I share resources with them. But those same patients are not getting pregnant quickly right afterwards. That is a myth. So another myth, and I think that it's really important that your fertility doctor works with the acupuncturist that they really like working with. And I'll give you an example of a fertility myth. And one of them is that acupuncture can actually increase the number of eggs, make them better. So you should wait 3 or 4 months before you do fertility treatment. And I would say that in my experience, that's a myth. So I have patients who, let's say, come to me at 39 and 40, and they see an acupuncturist, and the acupuncturist tells them that they really need to wait 6 months before their optimal health, before they can do treatment. And I would say that while I totally understand why some people might be getting that recommendation, but I think it's really important to actually do the acupuncture concurrently with your fertility treatment in order to give yourself the best chance for pregnancy. And this is actually a book that I recommend to a lot of my patients, and I have it in my office as well. So if you're a patient of mine watching this and you want a copy of the book, just remind me so I can give you one. So especially in California, where everyone is so health conscious, we're so focused on our diet and what we can eat and drink. And that's one thing that we can certainly control. But a lot of patients come to me being gluten-free, alcohol-free, caffeine-free, dairy-free. And what I would say is, you certainly are what you eat. There's no doubt about that. And eating as healthfully as possible with green leafy vegetables and high-dose antioxidants, that is very, very good for your health, and ultimately good for your fertility because it's decreasing inflammation in your body. But the thought that your fertility is that superficial, having to do with what you eat, is not quite the right message that I want people to have. I would say that's a fertility myth. So having dairy, having a cocktail on occasion, but if it's easier for you to just be totally sober, do that. Having a cup of coffee, science has not shown in any way that that decreases your fertility. So please enjoy life, live life to the max. Don't deprive yourselves of things that you want to eat or drink, but at the same time, be cautious of what your body needs. And so there are folks out there like fertility-minded nutritionists who will analyze the things that you eat and help guide you about what's right for your body. So you just heard all the fertility myths that I usually hear in a week. There certainly are so many more, but I just want to get these out there so that I can debunk these myths. And as always, I want you to ask questions and then ask more questions and then go back to your doctor and ask questions and keep showing up until you're successful. And if you need my help, you can go to eggwhisper.com, and I'm happy to help anyone who needs an ear, who wants me to look at their levels, look at their records. You can call in, you can email your questions here, and I'm happy to answer them during the show. So I want everyone to keep ahead of infertility and have a great night, and I really hope that you're going to join us next Wednesday. Good night.
Welcome to the Egg Whisperer Show, a program exclusively designed to promote reproductive health awareness and discuss fertility preservation options. Here is your host, the Harvard-educated fertility specialist, Dr. Amy.
She's known as the Egg Whisperer.
Fertility expert Dr. IVF Makes,
And you have yet another success story.
Just launched by an East Bay fertility doctor.
Welcome to the Egg Whisperer Show, a program exclusively designed to promote reproductive health awareness and discuss fertility preservation options. Here is your host, the Harvard-educated